The massive alien warships appeared without warning above Earth's major cities, their dark hulls blotting out the sun like mechanical thunderclouds. General Marcus Chen stood on the Pentagon's observation deck, watching through reinforced glass as the kilometer-long vessels maintained perfect formation over Washington, D.C. The silence was deafening. No engine noise, no communication signals, just the oppressive weight of their presence. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," Lieutenant Sarah Mills called from the communications station, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. "It's broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a figure that would haunt humanity's nightmares for generations. The HFY commander stood nearly 3 meters tall, its exoskeleton gleaming like polished obsidian. 6 arms moved with mechanical precision, while 4 yellow eyes regarded Earth with the cold indifference of a predator studying prey. "Primitive species of the third planet," the alien's voice resonated through hidden speakers, each word dripping with contempt. "I am War Commander Zethkar of the Galactic Hegemony's 7th Fleet. Your world has been selected for annexation into our empire. You have 5 rotations of your planet to surrender unconditionally. Resist and your species will be exterminated with extreme prejudice." The transmission ended as abruptly as it began, leaving the Pentagon's command center in stunned silence. General Chen felt the weight of 6 billion lives pressing down on his shoulders. Around the globe, similar scenes were playing out in military installations and government buildings as world leaders grappled with an impossible choice. "Get me President Morrison," Chen ordered, his military bearing never wavering despite the magnitude of the crisis. "And contact every military installation worldwide. I want a full assessment of our defensive capabilities within the hour." As staff officers scrambled to execute his orders, Chen's mind raced through the implications. The aliens had demonstrated technology beyond human comprehension, ships that could travel between stars, appear without detection, and hover effortlessly in Earth's gravity well. What chance did humanity's weapons have against such overwhelming superiority? The answer came sooner than expected. Reports flooded in from around the world as various nations attempted to test the invaders' defenses. France launched a squadron of their most advanced fighter jets at the ship over Paris. The aircraft simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, not shot down, but erased from reality as if they had never been built. Russia fired an intercontinental ballistic missile at the vessel hovering over Moscow. The weapon vanished in a flash of blue light a full kilometer before impact. "Sir," Lieutenant Mills' voice cracked as she delivered the latest intelligence reports. "Every conventional weapon we've thrown at them has been neutralized. They're not even bothering to acknowledge our attacks. It's like we're insects throwing pebbles at a tank." General Chen nodded grimly, studying the tactical displays that painted an increasingly desperate picture. The alien ships weren't just invulnerable, they were completely dismissive of Earth's military might. Each failed attack only reinforced the hopelessness of conventional resistance. But Chen had spent 30 years in the military, rising through ranks stained with the blood of countless battles. He'd learned that victory often came not from superior firepower, but from understanding your enemy's weaknesses and exploiting them with surgical precision. "Get me Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison from the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force," he commanded, remembering reports of the young Marine's exceptional tactical analysis during the recent operations in Eastern Europe. "I want him here within the hour." "Sir, with respect, what can one Marine do that our entire military can't?" Mills asked, confusion evident in her voice. "Sometimes, Lieutenant, the best solution comes from the most unexpected source," Chen replied, his weathered face set in determined lines. "Sergeant Morrison has a reputation for seeing angles that others miss. If there's a way to hurt these bastards, he'll find it." As emergency protocols activated across the globe, civilian populations were evacuated from major cities, while military forces prepared for what seemed like humanity's final stand. The media ran constant updates showing the alien ships maintaining their ominous vigil above Earth's capitals. Religious leaders preached about end times, while scientists desperately analyzed every scrap of data from the brief encounters. The clock was ticking. 5 days to find a miracle, or watch human civilization burn. In a small military transport racing toward the Pentagon, Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison stared out the window at the alien vessel hanging over the Virginia countryside. Unlike the fear and despair gripping most of humanity, Morrison felt something different stirring in his chest. Not hope exactly, but a cold, calculating anger that had served him well in Afghanistan, Syria, and a dozen other hellholes where the odds had seemed impossible. He'd read the initial reports during the flight, studying the aliens' response patterns and noting something that others had missed. The invaders had demonstrated overwhelming defensive capabilities, yes, but they hadn't actually attacked anything. Every destroyed aircraft and missile had been eliminated only after humanity fired first. They were reactive, not proactive. More importantly, they'd given humanity 5 days. Why? If their technology was so superior, why not simply begin the extermination immediately? The warning itself suggested either arrogance or protocol, both. Potential weaknesses that could be exploited by someone willing to think outside conventional military doctrines. The transport touched down at the Pentagon's secured landing pad. Morrison shouldered his gear and prepared to face whatever impossible mission awaited him. He'd sworn an oath to defend his country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The fact that these particular enemies came from beyond the stars was simply a detail to be addressed with proper tactical planning. The alien war commander had made one critical mistake in his contemptuous dismissal of human capabilities. He'd underestimated the fury of a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war against impossible odds. Jake Morrison was about to remind the galaxy why humanity had clawed its way to the top of Earth's food chain, and why they wouldn't go quietly into extinction. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison entered the Pentagon Situation Room 12 hours after the alien ultimatum, his combat boots echoing against polished floors that had witnessed countless military briefings. The room buzzed with controlled chaos as analysts pored over satellite feeds, communication intercepts, and tactical assessments from around the globe. General Chen looked up from a holographic display showing the alien fleet's positions, his face etched with the exhaustion of a man bearing impossible responsibility. "Sergeant Morrison, thank you for coming. I need fresh eyes on this situation, someone who isn't paralyzed by the magnitude of what we're facing." Morrison snapped a crisp salute before approaching the central display. The alien ships hung motionless over 17 major cities, their dark forms captured in high-resolution imagery that revealed intricate hull patterns and what appeared to be weapon arrays. "Sir, I've reviewed the initial contact reports and engagement summaries. Permission to speak freely? Granted. At this point, I'll listen to anyone with ideas." Morrison studied the display for several moments, his gray eyes tracking movement patterns and formation structures with the practiced gaze of a combat veteran. "These aliens are following protocols, sir. Look at their positioning. Perfect geometric spacing, synchronized movements, defensive postures. They're military, but they're also bureaucratic." "Explain," Chen commanded, sensing something important in the Marine's observation. "They gave us 5 days, sir. Not 4, not 6, but exactly 5. That's not arbitrary, it's regulation. Someone higher up their chain of command dictated this timeline, probably as part of their standard invasion protocol. They're following orders just like we do." Lieutenant Mills looked up from her communication station. "So what does that mean for us?" Morrison's weathered face cracked into a grim smile. "It means they have rules, Lieutenant. And rules can be bent, broken, or exploited if you understand the system well enough." General Chen leaned forward, interested despite his skepticism. "What else do you see, Sergeant?" "Their defensive responses are too perfect, sir. Every incoming projectile has been neutralized with precisely the minimum force required. No overkill, no demonstration of superior firepower beyond what's necessary to stop the threat. That suggests either extreme confidence or strict engagement parameters." Morrison walked around the display, examining the alien vessels from different angles. "Look at their formation spacing. Each ship maintains exactly 2.7 kilometers altitude and 3.6 kilometers separation from adjacent vessels. Those aren't tactical positions, they're parade ground formations. They're showing off, not preparing for combat." The room fell silent as Morrison's analysis sank in. For the first time since the aliens arrived, someone was talking about them as fallible entities rather than godlike beings. "There's something else," Morrison continued, pulling up tactical footage from the French fighter jet encounter. "Watch the timing on their defensive response. The jets were eliminated exactly 4.3 seconds after entering what appears to be a predetermined engagement zone. Not when they fired weapons, not when they locked on with targeting systems, but the moment they crossed an invisible line." General Chen studied the footage with renewed interest. "Automated defenses?" "More than that, sir. Programming. These ships aren't being individually commanded during defensive actions, they're following preset protocols. That means someone wrote software to handle Earth's military responses, probably based on intelligence gathering about our capabilities. Morrison highlighted several data points on the holographic display. Every defensive action has followed the same pattern. Identify threat, calculate minimum force required, neutralize with extreme precision. It's elegant, efficient, and completely predictable once you understand the algorithm. Sergeant, Lieutenant Mills interjected, are you suggesting we can predict their responses? I'm suggesting their responses are limited by their programming, ma'am. Whoever designed their defensive systems made assumptions about how we'd attack them. Standard military doctrine, aircraft, missiles, probably some kind of energy weapons if we had them. But what if we don't attack them the way they're expecting? General Chen's eyes narrowed with interest. What did you have in mind? Morrison pulled up Earth's defensive installations on the display. Sir, I need access to classified files on our most experimental military projects. Specifically, anything involving unconventional delivery systems or non-standard weapons platforms. That's highly classified material. Sergeant, sir, with respect, in 3.5 days, those classification levels won't matter anymore. Either we find a way to hurt these bastards or we're all dead. The general considered this for a moment before nodding to Lieutenant Mills. Give him level 7 clearance, whatever he needs. As classified files began populating Morrison's workstation, he dove into decades of military research and development projects, Aurora hypersonic test vehicles, experimental railgun prototypes, classified satellite weapon systems, and dozens of projects that had been deemed too dangerous or unpredictable for conventional warfare. Sir, I need to contact someone, Morrison said after an hour of reviewing classified data. Colonel Sarah Martinez at the Experimental Weapons Division. She's been working on something that might give us options these aliens haven't planned for. General Chen approved the secure communication link, and within minutes Colonel Martinez's image appeared on the holographic display. Her face showed the strain of the global crisis, but her eyes sharpened when she saw Morrison. Jake, good to see you're still breathing. I heard you were being consulted on our little alien problem. Sarah, I need to know about Project Thunderbolt. Everything you can tell me without violating national security. Martinez glanced at General Chen, who nodded approval. Thunderbolt is a kinetic bombardment system using telephone pole-sized tungsten rods fired from orbital platforms. We've had 3 successful tests, but the project was shelved due to international treaty concerns. The rods are still in orbit? Morrison asked, his mind racing through tactical possibilities. 12 of them positioned over various global targets as proof of concept. But Jake, even if we could activate the system, those rods would take 47 minutes to reach target altitude. The aliens would have plenty of time to respond. Morrison's smile turned predatory. Colonel, what if the rods weren't the real weapon? What if they were just a distraction? The room fell silent as the implications of Morrison's question became clear. General Chen leaned forward, recognizing the expression on the Marine's face, the same look he'd seen on elite soldiers who'd found a way to turn impossible odds in their favor. Sergeant Morrison, do you have a plan? Sir, I have the beginning of one, but I'm going to need resources. Clearance for highly classified operations, and about 36 hours to coordinate with some very specialized personnel. Whatever you need. Morrison straightened to attention. Sir, with your permission, I'd like to prove to these aliens that humans don't surrender. We adapt, we improvise, and we overcome. They want to see our capabilities? Let's show them what a motivated Marine can accomplish when properly motivated. General Chen nodded slowly, seeing something in the young sergeant that reminded him why America's military had never met an enemy it couldn't eventually defeat. Make it happen, Sergeant. Show these bastards what humanity is really capable of. Within 6 hours of receiving General Chen's authorization, Staff Sergeant Morrison had assembled the most unusual military team in human history. The conference room in the Pentagon's sub-basement had been cleared of all non-essential personnel, leaving only the individuals whose unique skills might give humanity its only chance of survival. Captain Elena Vasquez, callsign Ghost, sat at the far end of the table, her slight frame belying her reputation as one of the most effective special operations pilots in the military. She'd flown missions that officially didn't exist, using aircraft that weren't supposed to be possible. Her dark eyes studied Morrison with professional interest as he outlined the impossible mission parameters. So let me understand this correctly. Vasquez said in her soft Puerto Rican accent. You want me to fly an experimental stealth craft, loaded with an untested weapon system, through an alien defensive grid that has already destroyed everything we've thrown at it, and somehow survive long enough to deliver a payload that may or may not actually damage their ships? Morrison nodded. That's essentially correct, Captain. Except for one detail. You won't be alone. He activated the holographic display revealing the orbital positions of Colonel Martinez's tungsten rod satellites. The aliens have demonstrated perfect defensive capabilities against conventional weapons, but they're operating under programmed parameters. Their systems calculate threat assessment based on trajectory, velocity, and energy signatures of incoming projectiles. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Washington, a demolitions expert borrowed from SEAL Team 6, leaned forward with interest. You're talking about overwhelming their processing capabilities? Exactly, Chief. Their defensive systems are automated and incredibly sophisticated, but they're still following algorithms. If we can present them with too many variables to calculate simultaneously, we might create a window of opportunity. Dr. Amanda Foster, a theoretical physicist from DARPA's Advanced Concepts Division, adjusted her glasses as she studied the tactical data. The energy requirements for their defensive grid must be enormous. Even with their advanced technology, they can't maintain perfect coverage indefinitely without drawing power from somewhere. Morrison highlighted specific points on the alien ship's hull patterns. Doctor, you've had 48 hours to analyze their energy signatures. What have you learned? Dr. Foster pulled up her own data files, showing complex mathematical models and energy distribution patterns. Each ship generates what appears to be a localized gravity field for propulsion and positioning. The power requirements suggest some form of matter-antimatter reaction, but the energy output is carefully controlled and directed. They're not running at full capacity. Meaning what exactly? Vasquez asked. Meaning they're following conservation protocols. They're using exactly the amount of energy required for each task. No more. It's incredibly efficient, but it also suggests they have operational limitations we haven't seen yet. Morrison smiled grimly. Which brings us to Technical Sergeant David Kim from Cyber Command. Sergeant, explain what you've discovered about their communication protocols. Kim, a young Korean American who looked barely old enough to vote, activated his laptop and connected to the display system. Sir, the aliens have been broadcasting continuously since their arrival, but not to us. They're maintaining constant communication with their home fleet, using quantum entanglement principles we're just beginning to understand. And that helps us how? Chief Washington asked. Because quantum communication requires enormous amounts of computational power to maintain stable entanglement across interstellar distances. Every message they send or receive draws processing power from their onboard systems, including, Kim paused for emphasis, their defensive grid calculations. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Morrison continued the briefing with renewed intensity. Ladies and gentlemen, we have identified 3 potential vulnerabilities in the alien fleet: their reliance on automated defensive protocols, their energy conservation measures, and their need to maintain constant communication with their command structure. He pulled up a detailed tactical plan that had been refined over the previous 6 hours. We're going to exploit all 3 vulnerabilities, simultaneously in a coordinated strike that will either cripple their fleet or provide us with critical intelligence for future operations. Captain Vasquez studied the flight patterns and mission parameters. This plan calls for precision flying that's beyond the capabilities of our current aircraft. What exactly will I be piloting? Colonel Martinez's voice came through the communication link from her laboratory. Captain, you'll be flying the Aurora 7, our most advanced hypersonic reconnaissance vehicle. It's been modified with experimental stealth capabilities and equipped with a payload that Sergeant Morrison specifically requested. What kind of payload? Chief Washington inquired. Morrison's expression turned serious. A focused electromagnetic pulse device designed by Dr. Foster's team, combined with a quantum communication jammer developed by Sergeant Kim. The theory is that we can temporarily disrupt their defensive grid while simultaneously overloading their communication arrays, Dr. Foster added. The EMP device uses principles derived from our attempts to recreate ball lightning in laboratory conditions. It generates a concentrated electromagnetic field that should interfere with their automated systems, at least temporarily, How temporarily? Vasquez asked, already calculating flight times and attack windows. Best case scenario, 12 seconds. Worst case, 3 seconds before their systems adapt and compensate. Morrison stood and walked to the display showing the alien ship over Washington, D.C. 3 seconds, people. That's our window of opportunity. Captain Vasquez will have 3 seconds to prove that human ingenuity can overcome superior technology. The room erupted in questions and concerns, but Morrison held up his hand for silence. I know the odds are astronomical. I know we're asking people to risk their lives on a plan that probably won't work, but consider the alternative. In 67 hours, these aliens will begin systematically exterminating our species. Chief Washington nodded slowly. Sir, what do you need from my team? Diversionary explosions, Chief. While Captain Vasquez makes her attack run, I need you to coordinate simultaneous detonations at 17 strategic locations around Washington, D.C. Nothing that will hurt civilians, but enough noise and electromagnetic interference to mask our real attack. Morrison turned to the assembled team, seeing determination replace fear in their faces. This isn't just about killing aliens, people. This is about proving that humanity doesn't give up. Every species in the galaxy is watching to see how Earth responds to the galactic hegemony's ultimatum. If we can hurt them, even once, it sends a message that humans are not prey animals to be harvested. Sergeant Kim looked up from his calculations. Sir, if this works, we'll have more than just a tactical victory. The alien communication protocols carry detailed information about their fleet composition, strategic objectives, and military capabilities. If I can intercept even a fragment of their quantum transmissions during the communication disruption, we might learn enough to plan a real resistance. And if it doesn't work? Dr. Foster asked quietly. Morrison met her gaze without flinching. Then we'll have given humanity the most spectacular last stand in history. Either way, these aliens will remember that Earth doesn't surrender quietly. The team spent the next several hours refining tactical details, coordinating equipment requirements, and preparing for a mission that would either save humanity or provide its epitaph. As they worked, reports continued, flowing in from around the world showing increasing desperation as governments struggled with the impossible choice between submission and extinction. But in the Pentagon's basement conference room, 6 individuals were preparing to remind the galaxy that humans had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war, and they weren't about to stop now. The Aurora 7 hangar at Area 51 hummed with activity as technicians made final modifications to humanity's last hope. Staff Sergeant Morrison watched Captain Vasquez run through her pre-flight checks, marveling at the aircraft that would either save his species or serve as their funeral pyre. The Aurora 7 looked like something from science fiction rather than a military hangar. Its sleek angular frame seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, while the exotic materials of its hull shimmered with an almost organic quality. This was bleeding-edge technology, incorporating discoveries from decades of black projects and theoretical research. Sergeant Morrison, Dr. Foster approached, carrying a briefcase that contained their improvised weapon system. I've completed the final calibrations on the EMP device. The theoretical projections look promising, but I have to stress that this is entirely experimental technology. We're essentially firing a controlled lightning bolt at an alien spaceship and hoping it causes more than cosmetic damage. Morrison nodded, understanding the enormous gamble they were taking. Doctor, in my experience, sometimes the best weapons are the ones the enemy doesn't expect. These aliens have planned for missiles, aircraft, and energy weapons. They probably haven't planned for what amounts to a technological Molotov cocktail. Captain Vasquez completed her systems check and joined them beside the weapon mounting station. How much damage are we actually expecting to inflict? I need to know whether I'm making a suicide run or a reconnaissance mission. Honestly, Captain, we don't know, Morrison admitted. Best case scenario, we disrupt their defensive grid long enough to prove they're vulnerable. Worst case, we give them a light show before they vaporize you and half of Nevada. Chief Washington's voice crackled through the communication system from Washington, D.C. Morrison, my teams are in position at all 17 target locations. We've got enough pyrotechnics to make the 4th of July look like a birthday party. Just give us the word and we'll light up the Capitol like a Christmas tree. Sergeant Kim's voice joined the conference from his mobile command center. Sir, I've finished analyzing the alien communication patterns. They're broadcasting continuously on 17 different quantum frequencies, with priority transmissions every 4.7 minutes. If we time our attack to coincide with one of their priority bursts, their communication systems will be at maximum processing load. Morrison studied the mission timeline displayed on the hangar's main screen. Everything had to happen with precision timing. Chief Washington's diversionary explosions, Vasquez's attack run, Kim's communication jamming, and the orbital tungsten rod bombardment that would serve as their primary distraction. "Captain, what's your honest assessment of the flight profile?" Morrison asked, knowing that Vasquez's survival depended on her ability to navigate an impossible course through alien defenses. "Sir, I've flown missions that officially don't exist in aircraft that aren't supposed to be possible. But this?" She gestured toward the Aurora 7's exotic hull configuration. "This bird incorporates stealth technology that's 30 years ahead of anything we've previously fielded. The electromagnetic signature is almost completely masked, and the hull material should absorb most conventional scanning methods." Dr. Foster added technical details as she secured the EMP device in its mounting bracket. The Aurora 7's propulsion system creates its own localized electromagnetic field, which should help mask our weapon's energy signature until activation. The aliens won't detect the threat until Captain Vasquez is practically on top of them. Morrison checked his watch, noting that they had less than 18 hours before the mission launch window. "People, I want to be clear about something. This isn't a traditional military operation. We're not following established doctrine. We're not using proven weapon systems, and we have no backup plan if things go wrong." The hangar fell silent as the weight of Morrison's words sank in. They were attempting something that had never been tried, using technology that barely worked, against an enemy whose capabilities remained largely unknown. "Sir," Vasquez said quietly, "what makes you think this will work when everything else has failed?" Morrison walked over to the Aurora 7 and placed his hand on its sleek hull. "Captain, for the past 48 hours, every military leader on Earth has been thinking about how to fight these aliens using conventional tactics. Missiles, aircraft, nuclear weapons, all the tools that made us the dominant species on this planet. But what if that's exactly the wrong approach?" He turned to face the assembled team, his expression intense with conviction. "These aliens conquered other worlds before Earth. They've seen conventional military responses, they've planned for them, and they've developed perfect countermeasures. But what they haven't seen is human creativity applied to impossible problems." Dr. Foster nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You're treating this as an engineering challenge rather than a military engagement." "Exactly, Doctor. We're not trying to destroy their fleet. We're trying to hack their systems using electromagnetic interference. We're not fighting a battle. We're conducting a live-fire experiment in alien technology analysis." Sergeant Kim's voice came through the communication link with growing excitement. "Sir, if we can prove their defensive systems can be disrupted even temporarily, it changes everything. Other nations will know that resistance is possible. The psychological impact alone could transform this from a surrender scenario into a war of liberation." Chief Washington added his perspective from the field. "Morrison, my boys and girls are ready to light up the Capitol. Just remember that we get exactly one shot at this. If it doesn't work, they'll know we're planning active resistance and our 5-day grace period might end early." Morrison understood the risk. If their attack failed completely, the aliens might decide that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to surrender. The extinction timeline could accelerate dramatically, leaving Earth with no options except total annihilation. "Colonel Martinez," Morrison called to the secure communication link. "What's the status on the orbital tungsten rods?" Martinez's voice carried the strain of coordinating impossible logistics under extreme time pressure. "Sergeant, all 12 rods are programmed and ready for deployment. The targeting computers show optimal impact trajectories for the Washington, D.C. vessel, with backup targeting for the ships over London and Moscow if needed. Remember, Colonel, the rods are a distraction, not the primary weapon. We need the aliens to focus their defensive attention on the orbital bombardment, while Captain Vasquez makes her real attack approach." Morrison gathered his team around the tactical display showing their final mission parameters. "People, in 16 hours we're going to attempt something that military historians will either call the most brilliant tactical innovation in human warfare, or the most spectacular failure in recorded history." Captain Vasquez secured her flight helmet and began final equipment checks. "Sir, either way, it's going to be one hell of a story." The hangar filled with focused energy as final preparations began. Technicians completed weapon system installations, Communication specialists verified quantum jamming equipment, and intelligence analysts provided updated targeting data from the alien vessel's positioning over Washington, D.C. Morrison felt the familiar calm that came before combat operations. The moment when planning ended and action began. In less than a day, they would discover whether human ingenuity could overcome alien technology, or whether their species was truly facing extinction at the hands of superior beings. Either way, Earth would not surrender quietly. The Aurora 7 screamed through the upper atmosphere at Mach 6, its exotic hull materials glowing cherry red from atmospheric friction. Captain Elena Vasquez fought against G-forces that would crush an ordinary pilot, her enhanced flight suit barely keeping her conscious as she approached the most dangerous mission in human history. Ghost to control, passing through 70,000 feet. Target acquisition in 90 seconds, she transmitted through gritted teeth, her hands steady on controls that were responding to thoughts as much as physical input. In the Pentagon Command Center, Staff Sergeant Morrison watched the tactical display with the cold focus of a predator. Multiple screens showed the convergence of their carefully orchestrated plan. Orbital tungsten rods beginning their descent. Chief Washington's teams positioned throughout Washington, D.C., and Sergeant Kim's quantum jamming equipment powering up for the most sophisticated electronic warfare attack ever attempted. Morrison to all units. Mark time 60 seconds to weapon release. Chief Washington, initiate diversionary sequence on my mark. Above Washington, D.C., the alien vessel hung motionless in the afternoon sky, its dark hull reflecting no light as it maintained perfect position over the capital. War Commander Zethkar stood on his command bridge, monitoring the primitive planet's continued attempts at resistance with growing amusement. Combat Prime, Zethkar addressed his second-in-command. Report on the surface dwellers' military activities. War Commander, they continue launching ineffective projectiles at our defensive perimeter. Their weapons technology appears limited to chemical explosives and primitive kinetic systems. No threat assessment upgrade required. Zethkar's four eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. Humans were proving even more pathetic than initial intelligence estimates had suggested. Their military responses followed predictable patterns. Their technology remained centuries behind hegemony standards, and their leadership appeared paralyzed by the magnitude of their situation. Maintain defensive protocols, Zethkar commanded. Alert me when they begin their inevitable surrender transmissions. 300 miles away, Vasquez felt the Aurora 7 systems reaching optimal attack parameters. The aircraft's stealth capabilities were performing beyond specifications, rendering them nearly invisible to conventional detection methods. But whether alien sensors operated on conventional principles remained the critical unknown. Ghost to control, beginning attack approach. EMP device shows green across all indicators. Morrison's voice came through her earpiece with steady confidence. Confirmed, Ghost. Remember, you have a 3-second window once the electromagnetic pulse activates. Make it count. The tactical display in the Pentagon showed convergence vectors that would have been impossible without supercomputer-assisted calculations. Orbital tungsten rods were 30 seconds from impact. Chief Washington's diversionary explosions were primed for simultaneous detonation, and Sergeant Kim's quantum jamming systems had achieved target lock on the alien communication frequencies. All units, this is control. Execute on my mark in 5432 mark. The coordinated attack began with Chief Washington's teams triggering 17 simultaneous explosions throughout Washington, D.C. Not destructive blasts that would endanger civilians, but massive electromagnetic pulses designed to flood the alien sensors with false data. The capital's skyline erupted in brilliant flashes of light and electromagnetic interference. Exactly 2.3 seconds later, 12 tungsten rods began streaking down from orbit toward the alien vessel, their kinetic energy sufficient to level city blocks. The alien defensive systems responded instantly, calculating trajectory and threat assessment with mechanical precision. War Commander Zethkar felt the bridge vibrate as defensive systems engaged the incoming projectiles. Combat Prime, report. War Commander, multiple kinetic impacts incoming from orbital positions. Defensive grid is engaging. Estimated neutralization in 4.7 seconds. Zethkar watched with professional interest as his ship's defensive arrays vaporized the primitive projectiles with contemptuous ease. These humans are becoming tiresome. Perhaps we should accelerate the extinction timeline. But at that precise moment, Sergeant Kim's quantum communication jammer activated with devastating effect. The alien ship's communication arrays, operating at maximum processing load to coordinate defensive responses, suddenly found themselves fighting a sophisticated electronic warfare attack that overloaded their quantum entanglement systems. On the alien bridge, every communication console erupted in cascading system failures as quantum frequencies collapsed under the sustained jamming assault. The constant data stream connecting them to the hegemony fleet was severed, leaving the ship isolated for the first time since arrival. Communication breakdown across all frequencies. The communications prime reported with barely controlled panic. Quantum entanglement arrays are offline. We've lost contact with Fleet Command. It was exactly the distraction Morrison had planned for, with alien sensors focused on the orbital bombardment and their communication systems fighting electronic warfare attacks. The Aurora 7 approached from an impossible angle at impossible speed. Captain Vasquez lined up her attack run with the precision of a surgeon, the Aurora 7's advanced targeting systems painting the alien hull with invisible targeting lasers. Ghost to control. Weapon release in 3, 2, 1, firing. Dr. Foster's improvised electromagnetic pulse weapon launched from the Aurora 7's belly, accelerating to nearly the speed of light as it streaked toward the alien vessel. The device contained the accumulated electromagnetic fury of a controlled lightning bolt, focused through exotic matter lenses into a coherent beam of pure electrical devastation. The weapon struck the alien ship's hull at the precise moment when their defensive systems were overwhelmed with multiple, simultaneous threats. For exactly 2.7 seconds, the aliens' automated defenses were caught in a decision loop, unable to process the Aurora 7's attack approach while simultaneously coordinating responses to orbital bombardment and quantum communication jamming. The electromagnetic pulse penetrated the alien hull with surgical precision, seeking out the integrated circuits and quantum processors that controlled their automated systems. For a brief moment, every electronic system on the alien vessel experienced what human engineers would call a blue screen of death, a complete system crash that left them temporarily helpless. War Commander. Zethkar felt his ship shudder as primary systems went offline throughout the vessel. Emergency lighting activated as the main power grid fluctuated wildly, and for the first time in his military career, he experienced something that hegemony commanders were not trained to handle: technological failure. Damage report. He roared, his composure cracking as displays flickered and died around him. War Commander, we've experienced systematic electronic failures across 70% of ship systems. Defensive grid is offline. Propulsion is operating on backup power and life support is switching to emergency protocols. Captain Vasquez pulled the Aurora 7 into a crushing turn away from the alien vessel, her mission accomplished against impossible odds. Ghost to control, target hit confirmed. The alien ship is showing visible system failures. Recommend immediate follow-up strikes. In the Pentagon Command Center, Morrison watched tactical displays showing the alien vessel's energy signature fluctuating wildly. For the first time since their arrival, the invaders appeared vulnerable. All units, primary mission successful. The target has been damaged and is showing system instability. Prepare for secondary strike protocols. Around the world, military leaders and heads of state watched in stunned amazement as reports flooded in, confirming the impossible. Humanity had successfully attacked an alien vessel and lived to tell about it. But Morrison knew their victory was only temporary. The aliens would recover quickly. Their systems would adapt to prevent future electromagnetic attacks, and their response to human resistance would likely be swift and devastating. Still, for the first time in 3 days, Earth had proven that the galactic hegemony was not invincible. And sometimes, that's all the hope a species needs to begin fighting back. War Commander Zethkar stood amid the chaos of his compromised command bridge, watching his subordinates struggle to restore critical systems that had been functioning perfectly for over 3 centuries. Emergency lighting cast angry red shadows across bulkheads that had never known battle damage, while the acrid smell of burned circuits filled the recycled air. Engineering Prime status report, he commanded, his voice carrying the dangerous edge that his crew had learned to fear. The chief engineer, his 6 arms moving frantically across emergency control panels, delivered news that would have been unthinkable mere minutes earlier. War Commander, The primitive electromagnetic attack has caused cascading failures throughout our integrated systems. Primary defensive grid is offline for an estimated 47 minutes, while quantum processors reinitialize. Propulsion is operating at 37% capacity. Communication arrays are experiencing continued interference from an unknown jamming source. Zethkar's four eyes blazed with fury that transcended mere anger. In 5,000 years of galactic hegemony expansion, no primitive species had successfully damaged a hegemony vessel. The very concept violated fundamental assumptions about technological superiority that formed the backbone of their interstellar empire. How did they penetrate our defensive perimeter? He demanded, studying tactical displays that showed the impossible attack approach angle used by the human aircraft. War Commander. His combat prime hesitated before delivering analysis that defied military doctrine. The human craft approached during our engagement with orbital kinetic projectiles. Our automated defense systems were processing multiple simultaneous threats when a previously undetected aircraft delivered an electromagnetic weapon that exploited a vulnerability in our quantum processing architecture. The silence on the bridge was deafening. Zethkar had commanded 17 successful planetary annexations, each following identical patterns. Overwhelming technological demonstration, surrender ultimatum, compliance, or extermination. Never had a primitive species demonstrated the capability to damage hegemony technology. Communications Prime. What is our contact status with Fleet Command? War Commander. Quantum entanglement systems are slowly recovering, but the human jamming attack has created interference patterns that will require several hours to fully clear. We are effectively isolated until communications can be re-established. Zethkar studied the tactical situation with growing concern. According to protocol, loss of fleet communication during an annexation operation required immediate acceleration of the extinction timeline. But the successful human attack had introduced variables that weren't covered by standard operational procedures. On Earth, the news of humanity's successful strike spread across the globe with lightning speed. In military installations and government bunkers, leaders who had spent 3 days preparing for surrender suddenly found themselves contemplating resistance. The alien vessels still hung motionless over major cities, but they were no longer untouchable gods. They were machines that could be damaged. President Morrison addressed the world from an undisclosed location, his words broadcast on every available frequency. Citizens of Earth, today we have proven that humanity will not surrender without a fight. Our brave military personnel have demonstrated that these invaders are not invincible. They can be hurt, and they will be defeated. In the Pentagon Command Center, Staff Sergeant Morrison was already planning follow-up operations based on intelligence gathered during the successful strike. Sergeant Kim had managed to intercept fragments of alien communication during their system failures, providing the first real intelligence about hegemony military capabilities and strategic objectives. "Sir," Kim reported, his excitement barely contained. "The quantum communication fragments I intercepted contain tactical data about the entire hegemony fleet. They're not just planning to annex Earth. We're part of a larger campaign targeting 17 systems in this galactic sector." Morrison studied the intercepted data with growing understanding. "How many ships are we really facing, Sergeant?" According to their fleet communications, the Earth deployment consists of 17 vessels, but they're part of a battle group containing over 400 ships spread across multiple star systems. "Sir, Earth isn't their primary target. We're a minor acquisition in a much larger military operation. This intelligence fundamentally changed the strategic situation. Earth wasn't facing an overwhelming invasion force specifically designed to conquer their planet. They were dealing with a single squadron that was treating human annexation as a routine administrative task." "General Chen," Morrison called to the command center's senior officer, "we need to contact every military installation worldwide. If these aliens are treating us like a minor footnote in their expansion plans, they've seriously underestimated what humans are capable of when properly motivated." Meanwhile, in secure facilities across the globe, military engineers were analyzing footage from the Aurora 7's attack, studying every detail of the alien ship's response to electromagnetic warfare. Dr. Foster's improvised weapon had proven that hegemony technology was vulnerable to specific types of interference. opening possibilities for weapons that could be mass-produced using Earth's existing industrial capabilities. Captain Vasquez landed the Aurora 7 at a secure facility in Colorado, where teams of specialists immediately began downloading flight data and analyzing the exotic aircraft's performance during the impossible mission. The stealth technology had worked better than anyone had dared hope, proving that human aerospace engineering was more advanced than the aliens had calculated. Morrison, Vasquez reported through secure communications. The Aurora 7 sensors recorded detailed electromagnetic signatures from the alien vessel during the attack. Dr. Foster believes we can use this data to design more effective weapons, targeting their specific vulnerabilities. As Earth's military forces began coordinating a global response based on their newfound knowledge, War Commander Zethkar faced a decision that no hegemony commander had ever confronted. His ship was damaged, communications were compromised, and the primitive species had demonstrated unexpected technological capabilities. Protocol demanded immediate retaliation, a demonstration of superior firepower that would end human resistance permanently. But the successful attack had proven that humans possessed technologies and tactics that weren't included in hegemony intelligence assessments. Premature escalation could result in additional damage to his fleet. War Commander, his combat prime approached with obvious reluctance. Fleet command protocols require immediate status reporting following any damage to hegemony vessels. Our continued communication blackout will trigger emergency response procedures. Zethkar understood the implications. If communications weren't re-established within the next few hours, Hegemony Fleet Command would assume his squadron had been destroyed and would dispatch a much larger force to investigate. The 17 ships currently orbiting Earth would be reinforced by a full battle fleet capable of rendering the planet uninhabitable within minutes, but that reinforcement would take time to arrive, possibly days or weeks depending on fleet, positioning and strategic priorities. During that interval, Earth's military forces could continue developing countermeasures based on the intelligence they'd gathered. For the first time in his long military career, War Commander Zethkar found himself contemplating something that violated every principle of hegemony doctrine: the possibility that a primitive species might actually pose a legitimate military threat. On Earth, Morrison gathered his team for emergency planning sessions that would determine humanity's next move. They had successfully hurt the aliens and proven that resistance was possible. Now they needed to decide whether to press their advantage or prepare for the devastating retaliation that would inevitably come. People, Morrison addressed his assembled specialists, we've accomplished something that no one thought possible. We've shown these aliens that humans don't surrender easily. The question now is whether we can turn one successful attack into a sustained resistance campaign. The next few hours would determine whether Earth would face extinction or liberation. And somewhere in the depths of space, Hegemony Fleet Command was beginning to realize that their routine annexation of a primitive world had become something far more complicated than anyone had anticipated. 12 hours after humanity's first successful strike against the galactic hegemony, the wounded alien vessel above Washington, D.C. began to move. War Commander Zethkar had made his decision. Rather than wait for communications to be re-established with Fleet Command, he would demonstrate the price of human resistance with a display of firepower that would end their defiance permanently. Engineering Prime, what is our weapon status? Zethkar commanded, his 4 eyes fixed on the primitive city spread below his ship. War Commander, primary weapons arrays are operational at 68% capacity, sufficient to level the human population center and provide an appropriate demonstration of hegemony superiority. In the Pentagon Command Center, alarms screamed as sensors detected massive energy buildups aboard the alien vessel. Staff Sergeant Morrison watched tactical displays with grim satisfaction. The aliens were about to make exactly the mistake he'd been hoping for. General Chen, Morrison called to the senior officer, they're preparing to attack Washington, D.C. just as we predicted. General Chen studied the incoming data with confusion. Sergeant, how is this good news? They're about to destroy the Capitol and everyone in it. Morrison's smile held the cold edge of a predator who'd successfully baited his trap. Sir, with respect, they're about to prove to the entire world that the galactic hegemony are not the civilized conquerors they pretended to be. They're genocidal monsters who attack civilian populations. When their military superiority is challenged, the massive energy beam that lanced down from the alien vessel struck the carefully evacuated government district with devastating effect. Buildings that had stood for centuries vaporized instantly, leaving a perfectly circular crater where the heart of American democracy had once stood. The Washington Monument, the Capitol building, and the White House ceased to exist in a flash of alien fire that could be seen from orbit, but the attack accomplished something that 3 days of ultimatums and threats had failed to achieve. It united humanity in absolute determination to resist. Every television screen on Earth showed the smoking ruins of Washington, D.C., while Morrison's prepared broadcast began transmitting on every available frequency. Citizens of Earth. Morrison's voice carried the righteous fury of 6 billion human beings. You have just witnessed the true nature of our alien invaders. They claim to be a civilized galactic empire offering us annexation into their society. But when we dared to resist, they revealed themselves as nothing more than genocidal butchers who destroy our cities when their technological superiority is questioned. Around the globe, military forces that had been paralyzed by the aliens' overwhelming technological advantage suddenly found themselves motivated by something more powerful than fear: righteous anger at the deliberate targeting of civilians. The Geneva Conventions, international law, and basic military ethics all prohibited attacks on non-combatant populations. The aliens had violated every principle of civilized warfare. This is no longer about surrender or annexation, Morrison continued his broadcast. This is about the survival of human civilization against an enemy that views us as vermin to be exterminated. They have shown us no mercy, and they deserve none in return. On the alien vessel, War Commander Zethkar monitored human communication channels with growing unease. Rather than the expected despair and immediate surrender, the destruction of Washington, D.C. had triggered a massive mobilization of human military forces. Every nation on Earth was suddenly coordinating defensive preparations with an intensity that suggested they intended to fight, rather than submit. Combat Prime. What is the status of human military activities? War Commander. We are detecting massive increases in electromagnetic signatures from military installations worldwide. They appear to be activating weapon systems and coordinating joint defensive operations. Rather than surrender, the destruction of their capital appears to have provoked organized resistance. Zethkar's tactical experience suggested that primitive species typically collapsed into chaos when their command centers were eliminated. The human response violated all established patterns for dealing with technologically inferior civilizations. Communications Prime. Have you re-established contact with Fleet Command? Negative, War Commander. The human electromagnetic jamming continues to interfere with quantum entanglement systems. Estimated time to communication restoration is 16 hours. While the aliens struggled with damaged systems and communication blackouts, Earth's military forces were implementing plans that had been prepared during the brief respite gained by Morrison's successful attack. Dr. Foster's electromagnetic pulse technology had been distributed to manufacturing facilities worldwide, where emergency production was already beginning. Captain Vasquez led a squadron of modified aircraft equipped with mass-produced versions of the weapon that had crippled the alien ship over Washington. The Aurora 7 stealth technology was being rapidly incorporated into existing fighter aircraft, giving Earth a fleet of nearly invisible attack craft capable of penetrating alien defenses. Control. This is Ghost Leader with 7 Aurora-modified interceptors. We are approaching the target over New York City. Request permission to engage. Morrison's voice crackled through the communication network that now connected every military installation on Earth. Ghost Leader, you are cleared to engage. Show these bastards what happens when they attack human civilians. The coordinated attack that followed proved that Morrison's success had been no fluke. 17 modified aircraft struck alien vessels simultaneously over major cities worldwide, their electromagnetic pulse weapons causing cascading system failures that left the invaders temporarily helpless. In London, Moscow, Beijing, and a dozen other cities, alien ships found themselves fighting for survival against an enemy that had learned to exploit their technological vulnerabilities. The galactic hegemony's automated defensive systems, designed to counter conventional weapons, proved completely inadequate against Earth's improvised electromagnetic warfare capabilities. War Commander. Zethkar watched his fleet status displays with growing horror as ship after ship reported critical system failures. The humans weren't just resisting, they were winning. Primitive aircraft were penetrating hegemony defenses and inflicting real damage on vessels that had conquered star systems. War Commander. His combat prime reported with barely controlled panic. We have lost 7 ships to human electromagnetic attacks. Fleet combat effectiveness is down to 43% and continuing to decline. Recommend immediate withdrawal to safe distance for system repairs and communication reestablishment. For the first time in galactic hegemony history, a primitive species had forced their fleet to consider tactical withdrawal. Zethkar faced a choice between military disaster and the unthinkable humiliation of retreating from a pre-space flight civilization. But the choice was made for him when Sergeant Kim's quantum jamming systems achieved something that military theorists had considered impossible. They successfully intercepted and decoded hegemony fleet command frequencies, providing Earth with real-time intelligence about alien strategic planning. Morrison? Kim's voice carried excitement that bordered on disbelief. I've broken their quantum encryption. Sir, the hegemony fleet command is coordinating a massive military response. They're dispatching 3 full battle fleets to Earth's location. Over 1,200 ships. Estimated arrival time is 6 days. The news that should have been devastating instead filled Morrison with grim satisfaction. The aliens had revealed their true nature by attacking civilian targets, united humanity in resistance, and now they were about to demonstrate the full scope of the threat Earth faced. When 1,200 alien warships arrived to exterminate a planet that had dared to resist, the galaxy would witness something unprecedented, the fury of human beings fighting for their survival. People of Earth, Morrison broadcast to the world. Our enemy has shown us what surrender really means. They don't want to annex us, they want to exterminate us. In 6 days they will bring enough firepower to burn our world to ash. But they have made one critical mistake. They have given us time to prepare, and they have shown us that they can be beaten. Around the globe, emergency production facilities worked around the clock to manufacture the weapons that could hurt alien ships. Every nation contributed resources to a united war, effort that would either save humanity or ensure they faced extinction. With weapons in their hands, War Commander. Zethkar finally received the communication he'd been dreading. Direct orders from Hegemony Fleet. Command to maintain position and gather intelligence about human military capabilities until reinforcements arrived. Earth had become the first primitive world in galactic history to pose a legitimate military threat to the hegemony. And somewhere in the burning ruins of Washington, D.C., a memorial was already being planned for the Marine Staff Sergeant who had given humanity the tools to fight back against impossible odds. Jake Morrison had kept his promise. The aliens hadn't lasted 3 seconds when faced with human determination and ingenuity. The real war was just beginning.